Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 7th Planning Commission meeting. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks, everybody. We'll go on to introductions. I'm Tyler McCloskey, the Chair of the Planning Commission, and we'll go all the way to my right and work our way down.
Wayne Wright, Planning Commissioner.
Tiffany Mitchell, Planning Commissioner.
Annette Stewart, Planning Commissioner.
Jim Fisk, Principal Planner.
Connor Dahlquist, Associate Planner.
Ethan Walker, Assistant Planner.
All right, and it doesn't look like we've got anyone on Zoom. So we'll go on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? No? All right. Do we want a motion for the agenda or is it? Okay. We will keep the agenda. I will entertain a
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We'll keep the agenda as it is. We do not have a public hearing this evening, so we will go on to audience comments. We have one person in the audience. If you have, state your name and then 3 minutes with a comment.
Hello, my name is Tyler Danielson. I live off of Sydney, and I had a comment regarding the drive-through that Jim put in the agenda. I think that regulating the orientation of the drive-throughs would be good, and as a city, we would benefit from doing this to ensure that we build a place that people want to live, and where you don't need to walk across a giant parking lot to go to eat. Additionally, with the urban centers and the comprehensive plan, one of the goals from the comprehensive plan was to encourage the development of attractive destinations. And with parking lots being a very attractive destination, I think that maybe like a partial ban or like some sort of further restriction in those proposed growth centers could be beneficial for the long-term development of those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
It does not appear that we have anybody in Zoom.
All right. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the June 2nd meeting. Has everybody had a chance to check them out? Any changes or corrections to the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from June 2nd.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. And Wayne, I believe you're an abstention. All right. The minutes approved with one abstention. Moving on to the business items, 6A drive-through facilities. Jim?
Yeah, sorry about that. I got my agenda mixed up. So tonight we want to spend a few minutes talking about why staff is recommending updates to our regulations for drive-through facilities. As many of you know, we're seeing more of these proposals come in, and that's prompted us to take a closer look at how well our current code is serving both applicants and the community. Right now, drive-throughs are treated as an accessory use under our code, and in some zoning districts, they require a conditional use permit. The actual standards that apply, things like stacking, vehicle stacking, lane design, landscaping, and building integration, are spread across several different chapters. Because those regulations weren't designed as a single cohesive set, applicants often have trouble figuring out what applies and where. Staff is left interpreting standards that don't always fit well together. That can lead to confusion, unpredictability, and occasionally inconsistent outcomes. Now, on another important part of this discussion, and Tyler made comment to this, is how drive-throughs relate to our comprehensive plan. The plan places a strong emphasis on walkability, pedestrian-oriented development, and active streets. Drive-throughs by their nature introduce more auto-oriented elements, circulation lanes, curb cuts, stacking areas, and building orientation that are often turned inward or away from the street. These aren't automatically incompatible with our goals, but they do require thoughtful design if they're going to be implemented, and they should be complementary rather than undermine the walkable environments we're working to create. So staff has been exploring ways to make our regulations clearer and more intentional. We've been looking at whether drive-throughs should be treated as a specific building type or as a defined building feature, or whether it makes sense to consolidate everything into one part of the code. The goal in any case is the same: to create a more predictable, easy to use framework that supports both functional site design and our long-term vision for the city. We've also looked at examples from nearby communities that show what we're aiming for. Facilities where lanes are placed along the side or rear of buildings, where the architecture is consistent with the main structure, and where pedestrian circulation is clearly defined and safe. These examples, which were provided in your packet, show that drive-throughs can be designed well with the right guidance. Tonight, what we're really looking for is your initial direction. We'd like to know which regulatory approach feels most appropriate to you and what level of design guidance you think is necessary to achieve the goals of our comprehensive plan. With that direction, staff will prepare draft code amendments for further discussion and eventually for a public hearing and city council consideration. We're happy to answer any questions as we start the conversation.
Thanks, Jim. I'll open it up for questions or comments, starting with Wayne.
It's a pretty interesting topic, Jim. Appreciate where staff's at with this. Can you give us a kind of a rundown on what type of drive-through requests you're getting? Is it more Walgreens, pickup for RX, or is it mostly fast food, or a little combination of everything? What are you seeing?
It's a little bit of everything. One thing that's pretty common, though, is these standalone coffee stands. I think the most recent one that we permitted, well, there's been two fairly recently. The Gravity Coffee on Bethel is one, and the other being the Dutch Brothers. I'm not sure what you're supposed to say that way, but we've had some proposals on sites where the drive-through facility is really important to that restaurant or fast food, but the sites don't always accommodate what our standards currently are. So we're just looking for a way. Is it a specific building type or a building element that we can attach to any type of building?
Is there, have you found that sites that are small size are going to be most complex, clearly, if they want to have a drive-through and only a drive-through? If it's a combination restaurant drive-through or something else with a parking lot, then parking becomes a problem, because you can't, if you don't have the drive-through, people got to park. There's more parking, more stress there. Is it feasible, or can you see a feasibility of setting a minimum size of lot for certain types of activities? I'm just trying to avoid the developer who buys a small lot thinking I'm going to have this Taj Mahal drive-through, and he comes to you and they go, there's no way you're going to make this work. But I bought this property and I can see the conflicts show up. Is there, how can we make this the easiest way for?
Well, I think that's what we're trying to figure out, and that's why we're having this conversation. It may make sense that a drive-through facility can only be located on a property of a certain size. What that size is, I mean, we obviously have to do a little bit more research, but I think the most recent proposal that we've seen, to your point about parking, actually, I think it only proposed like 4 or 5 parking stalls. Is that about right? The rest was drive-through lane, and in fact, there was 3 parallel drive-through lanes next to each other. So the majority of the site would be a stacking area for vehicles.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I liked, of the 3 options you offered, I liked option 2 the best. That suited where I was kind of thinking about this. And you do have to have some flexibility for those oddball things that you got to, that creativity of engineering and planning kind of work with whatever ordinance we come up with, that they can still have a unique and successful opportunity for a business that meets our comp plan and our goals and objectives for wherever they are. Are we seeing these proposals also in mostly commercial locations? I'm assuming that's true, or,
Drive-through facilities?
yeah.
Yeah, they're really only permitted associated with commercial development.
So that would be another way of looking at it, is how do we blend it with the existing commercial activities so that it looks like it should be there, not just dropped somewhere out of the sky into the parking lot. So I'll get you started.
Thanks,
It's a
Wayne.
complex one for sure.
Tiffany.
Thank you. I have a couple things I wanted to ask on. Going back to like Wayne's thing. So like wanting to have something like whether it's in a commercial area or residential, I didn't have time to like look at a map to see what zoning requirements were. But for example, the apartments that are down, I think it's called, it's by a Safeway on
Yeah.
Sydney. It's the one on Sydney. And then there's like a Gravity Coffee, like right on the side of it. And so like, I guess how would that really super differ? Like, well, I mean, like, are we talking about like combining zoning, like having potentially, because it does talk in the packet about how some of the ideas are like with option 2, being able to sort of like integrate all of those things. And I'm just trying to imagine what that would look like.
Well, so for your example, that property is zoned commercial corridor. Those are actually not apartment buildings. It's a live-work unit, so it's designed to be commercial and residential in the same
Didn't
space.
know that. So.
Drive-through facility in that district is permitted outright. So our current code, when you're talking about the separation of drive-through facilities to residential, let's just say they're apartments because that's how they're being occupied. Our current code does not regulate the distance of a drive-through facility from a residential use, like a ground floor residential use. Rather, it regulates the distance from the drive-through facility to a residential zoned property. So that, I mean, there's two different things, right? There's the adjacent development and then there's the on-site development. And so I think what we'd want to do is form the regulations so it considers both of those things. But there's a lot that'll go into it now, whether that's a building element or a standalone building type. We've had a bit of debate internally about which way to go. And so that's why we're bringing it to you all, is to kind of get that high level direction.
And that
what might make more sense.
That kind of goes into my next question, which was around, so like I like all the options that were presented, at least number 1 and 2, and like Wayne, I kind of go towards 2, but I also see like the strengths that both 1 and 2 might have for different types of businesses. For example, 1 seemed like that could probably work out pretty well for like a standalone like fast food restaurant or a restaurant. And then 2 like seems for like a smaller thing, like a standalone coffee shop or something, or, you know, something like that, that might also work for that. You have in here that number 3, so that option number 3 is the least beneficial, or at least the least attractive. But in there it says, let's see, if we structure, where is it? I had it written down. But it basically says like it puts everything into like one code so that it's easier and more accessible. And so like, even though it says that it's the least desirable option, what makes it the least desirable? Because it's not written like it's an undesirable thing. So like, what is undesirable about that option? Is it just the work involved in trying to consolidate everything?
No, I think the work isn't the issue. It's just having another chapter that we would have to constantly update and refer to. I think creating a separate chapter mean, if we're going to go that route, everything is going to require a separate chapter, right?
Mhm.
And so I think we want to be mindful that building elements or building types, they already have a place to live, and we can develop regulations around our existing code.
Okay. And is there a reason why you couldn't hybridize 1 and 2?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Like combining those two options?
Well, and I think that's what creating a new building type would
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
but it would be only specific to that building.
And
Right.
that's why I'm saying, like, if you had 2 sections of it, like you say, okay, new building type has, like, if you had 2 different, I guess, distinctions for building types, one where it's the new building type, and then you kind of have like a separate distinction. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't know. That's kind of where, because I like them both and can see how that might be beneficial to different businesses with different aims. I don't know what would be the most flexible, but also give the city the ability to regulate the things that are important to us, particularly as the gentleman said, like the walkability piece, making sure that, like, for example, there might be a dedicated pathway that has to be able to be accessible from like a different, like a sidewalk or something that is completely separate from where traffic enters, so that people have that option to just walk in, go to the restaurant, leave, and never have to deal with like a car. So.
No, I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Creating a specific building type, in my mind, at least at this point, that building type, the sole use of it would be some sort of commercial activity.
Mhm.
The benefit of having it as a building element is then you can attach that element to any type of building. And
Okay.
so in 20.32, it outlines all of our building types, from detached houses, triplexes,
Mhm.
all those, mixed-use shop fronts, et cetera. So by having a building element, you can attach it to any number of building
Mhm.
types. In the building element section itself, there's already things like porch standards, standards for stoops, anything that's attached to a building. I think that there is a mechanism where we could do it as a building element, but there's merit to creating a specific building type. However, I don't believe that we would be able to create a building type that would accommodate all potential uses.
And I guess I just meant like for, like, there would be 2 different permits depending on what you wanted to do with the business. But if that is like a complicated direction to go, I understand. And so if that is the case, then like Wayne, I veer towards the second option. I like that one more. Let me see.
Can you remind me what the second option is? I wrote this about a week ago.
It was,
POMC 20.122.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a building element.
yeah,
Yeah.
making it a building. That's right.
And just for clarification, what we would do here would not require an additional permit. We are not in the business of requiring more permits, right? So this would just be associated with a land disturbing activity permit or a building permit.
Nope, that is fine. And then let me see. I think I had another thing. So I wanted, so you meant in the write-up, it talks about the Chick-fil-A as being like an excellent option for like where to go. And I have not been to the new Chick-fil-A in Gig Harbor to see how it is set up. I am familiar with the Walgreens and really actually like that approach quite well. So I do like that. But with the Chick-fil-A, can you tell me how that, other than like the landscape screening to try to like keep that as hidden as possible from like main traffic, does the Chick-fil-A in Gig Harbor kind of like mesh with like, or have elements of what we would want with our comprehensive plan in terms of walkability? Like, are there elements in there that you were also looking at that we could possibly try to incorporate into our own code?
Well, Well, first, if I mistyped it, that Chick-fil-A is actually in Furcrest.
Oh,
So that's probably why you
Oh,
haven't seen
okay.
it in Gig Harbor. So I apologize.
there is a new one in Gig Harbor, so maybe I just misread it. So,
And I may have mistyped it. But I think there are elements there that we are looking to incorporate the landscaping. From the aerial photograph, you can tell that the stacking lane is distinctly separate from any parking area.
mhm.
That's something that's lacking in our current code.
Yeah.
And so those are the types of things, the location of the order box, all of that is far away from the street, right?
Mhm.
It's intended to take that auto-oriented development and get it away from what we envision as being a pedestrian realm. So there are elements to it, not to say it's perfect, but there are elements to it that could be desirable.
Okay, nope, that's fine. And I probably just misread it. Like I probably read the Gig Harbor Walgreens. That's probably, and then put them in my head. I think the Chick-fil-A is being built, not that it has been yet.
The Gig Harbor Walgreens, as far as I can tell from their design regulations, I haven't reached out to anybody at Gig Harbor, but I believe that was done voluntarily by the developer. That is not a requirement of the Gig Harbor code.
Well, cool. Well, I still like it. So, and I think that was all I had about this particular discussion.
Thanks, Tiffany. I appreciated all of the options presented. I too veer more toward a building element option 2. And then Annette.
Yes, I think option 2, I like that one the best. I agree with a lot of what Wayne had said. But drive-throughs like Starbucks, things of that, where they're standalone, basically, they're in their own parking lot. I have no problem with those. I don't have a problem with any of them really, but if I had to pick one, I would do something that is like a standalone instead of something like Burger King out on Sedgwick, where you're driving through the parking lot of other businesses to get to it. Again, I guess I think who you should really talk to is In-N-Out does the drive-through very well. And anyway, but I do agree with option 2. That's my favorite.
I would suggest that the In-N-Out Burger in Salem, at least, they probably should revisit their stacking lane, because to your point, I had to wait in several other businesses' parking lots because the line was so long. So
Managing volume.
I was just in Vancouver and it was like, it was fantastic. But anyway, that's the point.
Can I follow up a few?
Sure.
So Jim, do you envision, this is Wayne again, do you envision a set of design standards or specifications that deal with the entrance in particular, so that we don't have multiple entrances crossing a sidewalk? There should be one common entrance, and then how they manage the traffic in their property. But if it's one lane, it should have a certain set of parameters, or 2 lanes, or you're just thinking all lanes get treated the same? How are you initially thinking about this? Because the examples you gave us are 2 vastly different examples. You know, one is super high-end enclosures, where the other one's a pretty standard drive around fast food type place. I'm trying to figure in my head how you're going to put this.
well, I think that's why we're having this discussion,
Yeah.
right? We want to be responsive to what the community wants and implementing the comprehensive plan's goals.
Yeah, because I think keeping it in sync with the comp plan is a great idea. It's something we really should do. Absolutely. Disrupting pedestrian traffic as little as possible, but making it sufficient to get cars in and out without causing distress on the people that are inside the establishment versus those driving into the drive-through. And then keeping it so we don't have to look at it or hear it or see it, and make it screened, if you will. So I think if you could figure out how to boil down the very basics of what I just said and keep those elements as your primary focal points. I'm a big fan of letting developers and engineers and planners outside of the city government have the creative juices to put something out there that's cool, fun, interesting, and makes us all go, wow, because that's a good business model. So I guess that'd be my point, is just keep it as basic as you can with here's the parameters we really, really want, and then let let the conversations between the staff and a future developer work some magic and see what we can get out of it. But keep it simple to start. We can always beef it up later if we have to. Because the first thing you're going to hear is, well, that place looks like that. I want that. And you're going, no, we don't want that anymore. So that'll be your first hurdle.
We get that every day.
So anyway, that's I'll quit there.
It turns out I had more I wanted to say. I apologize. So there was additional requests from us about like whether or not we want like to have standards around like the cohesiveness like by the of the order box with the restaurant, all of that. Yes, I would like that, as well as like covered things like in line, for example, over the order box and then over the window when you're picking stuff up, that as well, because I like those things. I don't like to get rained on. I love the rain, don't like to get rained on, especially in a drive-through. So that is something else I would want. And then I think that is it for that. So, oh, actually, I did have a question. So in terms of code, so if we are going to change things, and it sounds like we are with regards to future development of businesses that will have drive-throughs, in terms of how that will create sort of this mishmash look in the city, I really thought about this in relation to like landscaping. So for example, like the McDonald's on Bravo Terrace has landscaping there that supposedly like matched what I'm guessing they were required to put in at the time. If we were to change, for example, landscape standards going forward to create that sound screen and visual screen that were different from whatever the requirements were that McDonald's had to follow at that time, like at that point, when would they have to update their landscaping, if ever? Or any other standards? Like, would it be if they took out their drive-through and wanted to put a new drive-through in, they would have to update it then in compliance with our new code? Otherwise, everything just kind of stays the way that it is? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. And in fact, the McDonald's that you're talking about, you brought up landscaping. That was permitted in the county, under county standards, and the city has never required them to update their landscaping to meet our code. It likely does not satisfy our landscaping code, but to your point, we only implement these regulations when we have new development in front of us.
Okay.
We have an IHOP going in too. How are you going to handle retrofits with this sort of thing? That's just a question that came to mind when you start talking about that. Is that exempted as well? Well, there may not be a drive-through there, but maybe they want one.
If these regulations were adopted before they were vested, they had a vested application in, they would be subject to these standards if they were going to put in a new drive-through facility.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question to that? There was another part of the code that talked about how, like in terms of like roof lines that have a specific sight line, and it calls out, I think, Pizza Hut without saying Pizza Hut in terms of having a specific roof line. And IHOP kind of does too. And that's how we could kind of figure out that that was an IHOP when we were driving past it. And so in the code, it says that businesses in the Bravo Terrace Sedgwick area were exempted from from that sightline thing. So is that the only thing, like the roofline sightline thing, is that the only thing that they would be exempted from, or anything else?
Corporate architecture in that area is permitted. Elsewhere in the city, it is not. So my recollection, and I really don't like doing it from memory when I'm not absolutely positive, but my recollection of that section of 20.127 is that it only applies to building design and building, essentially the building, nothing on the site It doesn't exempt it fully from 20.127, but that article of it. So yeah, I mean, that IHOP is going to look a lot like an old Sherry's. But we don't require folks to, well, okay, we're going to get into the weeds. There are different levels of improvements when it comes to our design standards. And there's level 1, 2, and 3, and there's different thresholds. And it's primarily based on the addition of gross floor area. In most cases, when a property is redeveloping, like the one you're talking about, it's not going to trigger anything other than level 1 improvements. And at that point, we cannot require, let's say it was not in that exempt area, we cannot require anything above what they're proposing, essentially. So if they're going to put new siding on a building, well, yeah, then it has to meet the building materials, that sort of thing. But we can't require them to change roof lines and things like that.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have another question about the drive-throughs, and it's just a trying to remember question. Wasn't it down by the hospital that, and I don't know if it's still that way, but you weren't allowed to have drive-throughs down there? Like, didn't that used to be in the code? But now we have, well, we have a drive-through bike, we have a drive-through coffee stand.
There was an old, what did we call that? It was called like the Tremont Medical Overlay or something, and there were certain design standards. Those are no longer in the code. So I can't recall off the top of my head. I mean, because that was years ago, but I remember there being specific standards for signage, things like that, but I can't recall if there was anything about drive-throughs specifically.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? We will move on to business item 6B, drone delivery.
Okay, tonight we'd like to introduce our ongoing work related to potential amendments to the Port Orchard Municipal Code that would address drone delivery activities as a land use. This is an early high-level discussion. There are no draft regulations yet, and no action is being requested this evening. Our goal is simply to begin the conversation publicly and prepare for the possibility of reviewing draft language as soon as this summer. As you may recall, we provided the commission with a brief overview by email after the June meeting. However, tonight's presentation brings this topic into a public setting and gives us a chance to hear your initial reactions. We welcome the opportunity to gather early feedback before any regulations are drafted. This work began after the City Council work study session on May 19th, where representatives from Walmart and their drone delivery partner, Wing, presented a proposal to introduce commercial drone delivery from the Port Orchard Walmart site. And it's also my understanding that the city of Paulsbo has been contacted by Walmart and Wing and had a very similar presentation recently. Walmart and Wing's presentation covered how the system functions, the equipment needed on the ground, how deliveries would be routed through surrounding neighborhoods, and the safety technology behind the system, including detect and avoid capabilities. Council members asked a wide range of questions about operations, community impacts, and the city's regulatory authority. That full discussion is available on the city's YouTube channel for anybody interested in additional detail. Although the council was not asked to take action at that meeting, the presentation highlighted the need for a broader discussion about whether the city should develop local regulations to address the land use impacts of drone delivery operations. As a reminder, once drones are airborne, the Federal Aviation Administration has exclusive authority over their operation. Commercial delivery systems operate under federal certification requirements and typically fly up to around 400 feet, with the ability to operate beyond visual line of sight when equipped with approved detect and avoid systems. The FAA is also preparing a nationwide programmatic environmental assessment that examines noise, wildlife impacts, and compatibility with surrounding land uses. Where we do as a city we have local authority is over the ground-based activities. The installation of a launch and landing areas, the design and placement of equipment, the operational characteristics on the site, and the interaction of these facilities with surrounding land uses. We cannot regulate the airspace, but we can regulate the physical components on the ground. Currently, drone delivery is not identified as a specific land use in Title 20. A drone delivery operation attached to an existing retail business might be interpreted as an accessory use under our current framework, but that interpretation may not be sufficient to address potential impacts or meet community expectations as this technology grows. If the city chooses to move forward with local regulations, several themes will likely be important. These include where launch and landing areas can be located, how they should be screened or buffered, whether hours of operation should be limited, how public safety agencies should be involved, and whether performance standards or conditional use requirements are appropriate, especially in or near residential areas. These themes are not yet drafted into code language. They simply outline the areas where we believe policy discussion is useful. As we continue this work, we'll be researching how other jurisdictions are approaching drone delivery facilities and monitoring the ongoing federal environmental review. Based on City Council direction and feedback from this commission, we may prepare draft amendments for discussion as early as next month's Planning Commission meeting. Public outreach and stakeholder involvement should be built into that process. This evening, we recommended that the commission use this time to discuss potential impacts, identify any additional information or examples that might be helpful, and share early thoughts that can help guide development of draft regulations. We appreciate your input as we start this work, and we're happy to answer any questions as we start the discussion.
Thanks, Jim. We'll start it with Annette. Any thoughts on drones?
So have you guys, is there going to be like a professional come in and talk about like the regulations and stuff, how drones operate and what? I just feel like us here, we don't really know the background of drones or how they operate or their laws and regulations. And so we could start a conversation, but to really focus on what they are and how they operate. Like, it's my understanding that if I have a drone and I held it in my hand and it went off from my hand, it's not on the ground. I mean, I could do that anyway, from what I understand. And so, and when I was in Arizona, I was watching these drones that were leaving from Arizona, and they were flying out, making their delivery. And what I'm wondering is it something that Port Orchard doesn't want to have here? I mean, is that like the goal, not to have them? And so we're going to come up with regulations like to keep them out. And then, but then we talk about, well, we don't want to have to drive everywhere, but yet we don't want to have, I don't know, I guess, and I'm not against not having it or having it. I'm either way, but I feel like in order to do, to really have a good discussion on this, you should have some professional drone operators or people that teach it. And so that they could teach us what it's all about and how they operate and what the standards and stuff are. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you. I will say, just to piggyback on Annette, just if you go back and you watch the City Council work session, I think it was June 19th, was that the day? They actually go over a lot of that. I was quite impressed with that presentation and how comprehensive it was. That said, I did see some places where I felt like there wasn't tons of information given. And of course, I mean, it's the parent company of Wing is Google, or Alphabet as the actual name. So I'm like, I don't know how much information I'm being given and how much I'm not being given. One of the things that was interesting to me was that they, one of the council members brought up impacts to wildlife, and they talked about the programmatic review that's being done, and that it's not official yet, but I guess there's a draft out there from 2025 that I was reading through specifically for that. And it says right in there that yes, it may impact migratory birds. It may impact protected species like golden and bald eagles, but likely not to is what it said. But at the same time, in the same document, previously, I guess the FAA had not required drone operators to report bird strikes. It was a voluntary thing. And so it says that, out of all the drone flights out there, that there's never been a reported bird strike. Well, if you're not requiring it, how do I know that that's going to happen? The wing presentation at City Council also said that there is not a live feed on the camera. I didn't quite totally understand how it navigates. It's in part that there's like somebody in a control room somewhere that is like feeding it data, and it can tell like altitude, but it can't like really see things. So I also just don't know how, if there's not a live feed, if it were to have some sort of interaction with wildlife, what that would do. They also address sound impacts. It wouldn't be a huge deal for human beings. It's like 85 decibels, but I don't know how that impacts smaller animals, especially animals that rely on sound to hunt, like bats. And from everything I looked into, there really isn't good data. There is like one study that I did find, and that it is actually referenced in the document from the federal government, from the FAA. That draft report says that like it can cause birds to abandon their nest, but like it's only been documented in cases where drones were actually used to study that phenomenon. So like in this case with the Walmart drones, like would they have that same impact? Maybe, maybe not, because they're not going up and trying to like actually agitate the birds, as I'm sure in the other study. Back to my actual question, now that my laptop is turned off, I wanted to ask you, Jim. So I didn't get that we were trying to necessarily stop Walmart, because there were a lot of pluses that they brought up. The fact that it seemed to actually create jobs at Walmart because they had to hire additional staff to be able to bring the drones out into like the launch pads and stuff. Like there were positive impacts, and it was very like the highest payload was like 5 pounds, I think. So like it would never be carrying more than 5 pounds. But I don't know if I feel comfortable with it until that programmatic study comes out. And I don't know if I feel comfortable with it until we actually have good data. And I don't know if I can trust it in terms of wildlife impact. So if we don't move forward with making, like if we didn't approve for whatever reason the standards that staff comes up with, if it does require the accessory use, then like, does that mean it doesn't go to the city council? Like city council can't approve it because we didn't approve stuff on our end for the infrastructure?
So the primary purpose of tonight's meeting,
I'm just asking.
I know, and then
I know it's not what we're voting on. I just want to know.
the primary purpose of tonight's meeting is to put this topic in the public realm, right? We heard Walmart and Wing at the May 19th work study meeting, and they made their presentation. But in my viewing of that meeting, I think that the city council still has some policy decisions to make. And so I don't have an answer for you if the city council envisions this as being permitted or not. What I can say this is that a lot of the discussion so far by the commission has been based on the operation and when these things are airborne. We do not have any way to regulate that.
I know. Yeah.
So the only thing we would be regulating is any activity on the ground. We are going to discuss this at tomorrow night's land use committee meeting. I'm hopeful that we get a bit more direction, because it seemed to me that the city council was kind of split on the issue that whether or not this should be permitted. And we need as staff to have clear direction before we draft anything. That's why we haven't drafted anything. is where we're going with this. And so we wanted to get your feedback on
Mhm.
this, so that we can share that with the land use committee tomorrow night.
And I think my feedback would, in general, like, I guess I just want to know, like, how quickly would we theoretically, like, if you got that draft language to us in August, for example, for the August meeting, if we didn't feel comfortable moving forward with even like really approving or recommending that to the council, could they not then move ahead yet either? Because again, I sort of feel like I don't want to be responsible for being the first domino that is necessary for something that may actually not be good. Because again, I don't know what the other impacts are down the road. If city council did say, yes, we actually do want to do this, we need planning commission to do it first, and there are impacts that were actually bad. Again, I don't know if I want to be that first domino. So if we didn't, does that stop city council?
What will happen is we'll get direction from the city council on which way to go with this issue. Well, first we'll introduce draft language to the commission for discussion. And I understand where you're coming from,
Mhm.
but eventually we would hold a public hearing, and then every commissioner can vote yea or nay on whatever is proposed, whatever that is. And that recommendation is then sent to the city council for their
Mhm.
decision.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. And then the other question I had, so Director Bond brought up in that same meeting that he wasn't sure if this actually did require the accessory use that we're talking about right now. Like, for example, he brought up the fact that there are delivery vehicles that drive out of Walmart every day, and they don't have any accessory use permits for that, or any, like, there's nothing regulating that. So how are delivery vans different and not regulated, but drones are? Has that been discussed, and we actually definitely do need to use this to do this, I guess?
I don't know.
Okay.
There is a difference between drones and vehicles, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't need to tell you the difference between them.
No,
We
I know.
do have the ability to regulate that specific activity as an accessory use. It is not listed anywhere in our code right now. So if a proposal comes in, we would have to make an interpretation of our code. Is it permitted or not?
Mhm.
And right now, to Nick's point, there isn't much difference when you look at it solely based on the delivery activity.
Mhm.
So the answer is it depends, I guess. But that's what we're working toward.
Okay. Nope, that's fine. Last question. In terms of liability for anything, like they did talk about insurance, like liability insurance that Walmart would have to have in case like a package dropped on someone or like dropped on a car and dented the car. Like the city is not, and maybe this is more a city council like thing. Like if we allow for the operation of of that technology within Port Orchard, if something happens within Port Orchard, liability is solely on the people who operate the drone. Nothing could come back to us for allowing that to happen anyway. Correct?
I am not an attorney,
Okay.
but just being a normal person, I would say that just because the city allows a certain activity, let's say it's a delivery van who delivers
Mhm.
parcels, and that delivery van is in a crash, the city is not typically liable for that.
Mhm.
However, I am not an attorney, but that's just, to me, kind of a common sense place to go.
I would think so as well. I just also know that like with new and emerging technologies, like there's all those questions out there about like AI and who is responsible for AI if it gives somebody the wrong information. Like it's a whole different ballgame. We haven't been in this world for even 10 years yet. So it's just an interesting thing. So that's why I'm getting it out there in terms of a question to see where things go.
Thanks, Tiffany. Wayne.
I'll try to keep it succinct. I'm not in favor of these things delivering to individual addresses yet. I mean, I just see how many trucks of Amazon go up and down my street. And if I heard that buzz as often as I heard those trucks go by, it would drive me nuts and my neighbors nuts. And I've checked this out with several people. I've got some support with that. I am in favor of these things picking up what I call the node distribution. So if it is a multifamily or an apartment type complex that has a place that can land and they can deliver packages to a locker setup in a concentrated area of people to avoid them driving and congesting up Bethel when it's under construction, I see this as a godsend in some respects. So I think you're right. Finding out where the landing zones are, the most appropriate ones, and targeting those first is the way to get into this, so that we deliver packages, at least the smaller ones, to where the people are to avoid them driving to Walmart. Similarly, you could do something like out in the villages of McCormick Woods, where you could have a locker set up there and a drone landing pad where they could take the packages and, again, put a locker together, following the hybrid Amazon locker scenario. I am not in favor of these things flying all over private communities, making noise, delivering to individual front porches. I just see a whole host of potential problems once on the ground versus when it's in the air. We're just trying to stay to the ground here. So that's my first and foremost thoughts about it. I do think there's a lot to do about this. There's a lot of research been done with these drones. They're fairly large, and 85 decibels is pretty loud. You'd be surprised how loud that is, actually. From an energy perspective, the jury's still out as to whether this saves any energy or not. So let's just put that on the back burner for the moment. Wherever these things do go in Walmart, before they deploy them, they've got to be charged, they're maintained, they've got lithium batteries. There's a whole variety of new activities that have to be thought about for storage and maintenance of these particular pieces of equipment. So fire hazard, again, it's in here when you talk about the rest of the agencies. The fire department is going to have to definitely have something to be said about how those batteries are stored and maintained. Power grid, how much power are they going to need to power them up? How long they last, we don't know yet. So there's a whole variety of things on the ground that we will have to have a say in. This is why I'm more in favor of that whole node situation where you have destinations picked out in the community where people can go shorter distance to pick up their packages without having to go all the way to Walmart. So, and whether that's Walmart, but the big beast in the room is Amazon. They're not far away, and they're the ones that are going to come at us hard. So I prefer to take one bite at a time on this versus open the gates. So that's my thoughts on it. Thanks.
Thanks, Wayne. Do you want individual feedback for the commissioners that are?
That's fine. Wayne sent me, I'm sorry, Mr. Wright sent me some things earlier this week. I haven't had a chance to look at them, but we welcome all of your comments so that we can start having that discussion.
Sounds good. Thanks. All right, on to number 7, the director's report. Is that you, Jim?
Yeah, not much to report tonight. Connor and I manned a booth at the farmers market on the 27th, so the weekend before last, to do some outreach on the Sherman Avenue Stormwater Park. Connor provided an update to you at last meeting about the workshop and some of the survey results we received since then. We're handling the survey through SurveyMonkey, and probably a week or two after we had opened that, the responses kind of just stopped. And so we went out to the farmers market, did a little outreach, and we saw a little uptick, not many more, but that survey is still active and open. And if you want to pass it on to anybody you think might be interested, that'd be great. It closes on the 12th, which I think is this Sunday, right about midnight. But yeah, it was a good time getting out there and seeing the people. hopefully we get some more input that's useful when we start bringing that plan back to you all. We'll have a little bit more public input. So that's it for director's report. Not much.
All right. Is there still a design element for that that's more favorable with the survey?
I don't want to bias anybody, but yeah, I think there is a pretty clear leader right now.
All right. Number 8, anything for the good of the order? Anybody have anything? All right. Our next meeting will be August 4th. And on that, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.